Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's SAP Women in Tech session. We are so happy to have you all here, and thank you for joining this session. I know you're going to enjoy it as much as I will. But firstly, I want to ask, where are you joining us from? So drop your location in the chat because I think it's always interesting for us and our speakers to see how diverse our audience is. I know it's different for everyone. I'm saying good morning because I have a feeling a lot of our audience today may be US based, but I'm located in Germany. So let us know where you're coming from in the chat. So my name is Sarah. I am going to be your moderator today. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm going to start off with some housekeeping. So as I mentioned, this session is being recorded and we will share it with our external speaker today. So keep that in mind when wanting to maybe turn on your camera during questions. If you're okay with it, absolutely go ahead. If not, you can drop your question in the chat. And that leads me to my next point, Q&A. So our lovely two guest speakers will present and then we'll open for questions once they're done. So you can either drop your questions in the chat and I'll make sure to read them out to our speakers, or you can just turn on your camera or mic and ask directly, which we always encourage to do in these virtual times. It's always nice to see some other faces as well. So yeah, that's out of the way with housekeeping. Now I'm going to get to our lovely speakers today. So firstly, I'm going to introduce Nicole Smith. And Nicole has been with SAP for 10 years now, and she started her career in consulting, then pretty early on moved to sales, and today she's the vice president of sales, and she leads a team of industry AEs that sell the overall SAP portfolio into named manufacturing industry customers. Our second lovely speaker is Mariah. I keep saying her name wrong, and we just had this discussion prior, and I said I might mess it up again, but I'm going to give it another shot. It's Maria. No, Maria. Yes? Did I get it right?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm proud of myself. So she's the co-founder and CEO of Innovative Solution Partners, which is an SAP service partner, and they specialize in business intelligence services. Now, she also has over 20 years of experience in IT and entrepreneurship, and she serves as the president-elect for the National Association of Women Business Owners Greater Detroit chapter, and as a director on the board of CARES in Farmington Hills. Now, our topic today, as you probably saw the title, this is a Women in Tech Meet session where a SAP Women in Tech meets with a partner or customer and discuss a topic together. Now, as SAP is undergoing, enormous business transformations to deliver values to our customers differently, it can be tricky for us to really understand the why, what, and how. So today, our two lovely speakers are going to break down the SAP transformation journey for us in a way that we can understand, communicate, and translate into something meaningful and relevant. So with that out of the way, I want to thank you both so much for being here with us today, and I hand over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. We're so excited to be here today. Nice to meet everybody. Hope we can keep the connections going after this session. As Sarah mentioned, I'm currently an industry vice president with SAP. I've had a lot of different roles here in our sales capacity, from services to line of business to industry teams. So I have a pretty broad experience here. And as Sarah also mentioned, I have a delivery background. So, coming from that problem solving mindset, being able to really understand our solutions deeply and explain the value simply is something that has helped me along my journey at SAP, and just one of the reasons why I'm so very passionate about this topic. I think the format today, we're not going to use any slides. Think about it as like a fireside chat, if you will. So it's just going to be Maria and I going back and forth with our thoughts. Before we kind of set the stage for the conversation, I'll let Maria provide a little bit more of an introduction of herself.
Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, excited to be here with all of you today. A little background about myself. I grew up in my parents' small business here in just outside of Detroit, Michigan is where I'm located here in the United States. So I was exposed to technology early on. They sold and repaired computers. So when they weighed a ton, there was a floppy disk. I can show my age, I think, through all of this. And I ultimately ended up going to college, working for Big Six Consulting. And unfortunately, fortunately, however we see it, I didn't really survive very long in corporate America. So when the time came, we had a client that approached us. That is when I incorporated and we created Innovative Solution Partners. So we're an SAP services partner focused really on my passion, I think is what comes through in this business, which is connecting the dots between people, operations, and technology. I think a lot of customers come to us because they think technology is going to solve their problems, but it really takes all those facets of people, operations, and technology. So I'm really excited that Nicole and I are able to really have this conversation today, because I think it's a convergence of all of this. So, Nicole, you and I have seen over all these years that we've been in this industry.
A lot of change. Absolutely. Yes. And I probably should have mentioned where I'm from too. That's a data point that might be nice to know. So I'm in the Midwest market unit. I live in Michigan, currently on Purdue campus in Indiana here, about to see a customer site after. So, in Maria, maybe we can just set the stage a little bit for kind of why we're here, what we want to talk about, right? As Sarah mentioned, and I'm sure all of us have experienced, whether you're an employee at SAP or otherwise, SAP is going through a huge transformation, the largest transformation, I would argue, in our 51-year history, right? And I feel like I need to have a disclaimer that these views and opinions are my own, but I mean, we've been getting better at it lately, but I think sometimes we don't do a great job communicating what our holistic strategy is and really why it matters. Why does it matter to our customers? Why does it matter to our partners? Why does it matter to our employees, right? We see things coming out and products and bits and bytes, but sometimes it's just hard to understand how it all rolls up and why. And so this is a topic that I'm personally really passionate about in terms of helping our employees, helping our partners, and helping our customers really understand and unpack that. And I think, it takes a tremendous amount of change, which I'm sure, again, we've all experienced, in order to deliver on this transformation. And one of the most critical pieces of being able to deliver on this transformation is the role that our partner community is going to take, right, in order to deliver that and make our transformation successful.
Yeah, I think, it's really interesting, Nicole, because we've been an SAP partner for quite a few years, and this transformation is one of the biggest transformation evolutions that we have seen or experienced. And I think it's easy for that message to get lost. And I think you alluded it to really well. I mean, there's so many people that are affected by this, whether you're within SAP, whether you're an SAP partner, or whether you're a client. I can tell you from an SAP partner perspective, we're front facing. We're the ones that are on the ground with our clients all the time. I mean, we see their challenges, we see their successes, we see their frustrations. And I think as we are all here today talking, I tell my staff all the time, every opportunity, every interaction we have with a customer is an opportunity to share something, provide value. And I think today's conversation starter is a great way to get this conversation going. So we, it's all aspects, we're all committed to the same end goal, which is how are we going to continue providing value to clients that are really so vital to all of us.
Absolutely. So I think maybe a great place to start would be to provide a little bit of context and definition, right? We say things like transformation, and it's kind of like, okay, what does that really mean? Why are we doing this? Why couldn't we just keep operating as we have been for the last 50 years, right? So I want to spend a few minutes really unpacking that and setting the stage for where we came from, where are we going, why are we doing it, so that hopefully other conversations become easier to understand, right? So I mentioned, and everyone on this call knows, right? Been in business for over 50 years. If you really think about it, for a tech company, that's a really long time, right? And our deep expertise is something that we traditionally use as a value proposition for SAP, right? No one has the industry expertise or the breadth of expertise in the end-to-end business process like we do. And, as good of a value proposition as that is, it is also can be a hindrance, right? We have a lot of baggage that can come along with that 50-year history. We have a lot of legacy product that our customers are still running that we need to maintain, and that gets expensive. And then you have this element of customer expectations that are changing, especially in recent times, right? They're really are no longer, at least the customers that I serve, very few customers that are undertaking these enormous multi-year ERP transformations, right? Business transformations are different. Us as a sales team, we used to maybe spend 6 months, 9 months, 12 months with a customer, right? We come up with this bill of material, right? It's traditionally, the more you buy, the more you save. So customers just loaded up on these enormously scoped projects. And then SAP says, thank you for your business, basically, and good luck to you, right? And then inevitably there's projects that are over budget, they're over time, right? They never really realize these grandiose visions of ROI and business value that companies set out to in the beginning. And SAP, unless they're helping on the consulting side, is really not necessarily in that picture, except for providing product support, right? And then maintaining these landscapes over time becomes even more challenging and complex. And the more modifications you make, right, the more complexity increases. Doing things like an enhancement pack upgrade or upgrading the product just turns into these enormous projects. And when I started here, or a few years after I started here and S4 came out, right, customers were super fatigued, right? They were still trying to sweat the asset from ECC. They were, don't talk to me about this new product. Like, I'm still trying to roll this thing out that you sold me 10 years ago, right? And it was a really large barrier to entry for S4 HANA, which was a problem at SAP, right? Customers right now, at least from my experience, are really looking for quick wins, quick time to value, more of a modular based approach to technology projects, right? CFOs are looking for a very asset light model. They are not wanting these capital intensive programs and being locked into, solutions in perpetuity and really being responsible for those assets. And then at the same time, you have, customers that are expecting more accountability from their software partners and their technology partners. They want us to participate in making sure that they have a successful outcome, right? You're seeing the shift of consumers that are really wanting to kind of consume a service instead of owning a product. And technology has just come so far in the last 50 years or so. I hate to use the example of a cell phone because I feel like everyone uses this example, but I'm going to do it because I do think it's relevant, right? Is if I can do and get any information that I need in real time, and I don't have to be trained on how to use this, it's just a matter of time before the market really dictated that business systems have to act the same way, right? And technology, if you think about it, is really becoming a critical differentiator for customers. And right, I mean, if you think about the market disruption that's going on and some of these really large multinational businesses that are no longer relevant or going out of business, they're being disrupted by much smaller, a lot of times tech companies that are much more agile and nimble and don't have all that baggage, right? And they're reaching these billion-dollar valuations faster than we've ever seen before. And traditionally, SAP wasn't necessarily thought of in that market, right? In that kind of small to mid-sized market. And, if you think about it, that is really where we as a company need to focus on in order to grow our market share and continue to evolve as a company. And so I think we came to this point, right, where we realized that we could not continue in the existing model that we were living in, which is basically a product company, right? Again, you buy a product, you own it in perpetuity, and you pay us an annual fee so that we can maintain, support it, and make sure that it stays current on an innovation path. And, SAP was also just not really thought of outside of, the biggest customers, the most complex customers. And, that's a problem, and that's not going to be able to keep us successful in the future. So what you have going on now is this enormous shift from being a product company to really, how are we going to sell our products and deliver our products differently? How are we going to reach different markets? And that's really what we're doing, is we're making a large pivot to becoming a service-based customer, or company rather, and reaching different markets to fuel our growth. So, there's two major themes that I think we want to focus on here today. And the first one is this idea of shifting to this mindset of customer lifetime value, right? Not being opportunistic, not being in the moment, not just focusing on top line sales growth, but really making sure through that whole life cycle of a customer that we're creating value, we're seeing adoption all throughout that life cycle, right? And the second one is really that SAP growth strategy, and that enormous focus that we need to ensure that we have on our net new customers that don't own SAP, and some of these smaller, medium-sized business markets where SAP may not have historically been thought of as the go-to because we're too expensive, we're too heavy, we're too complex, right? And that, if you think about it, it might sound simple, but it's really an enormous undertaking that it requires in order to make that shift. And it's really not just a commercial thing, right? It's not just about selling customers cloud-based technology. It's really impacted every single part of our business. And I think that's really the core theme that I'd like to focus on in these next couple of minutes, is what is that impact to every part of our business, and what does that mean, right? I think the first thing that I talk to customers about is really how we look at success, right? How do we measure what good looks like? I kind of alluded to it a few sentences ago. Top line sales can't be a measure of success for SAP any longer, right? It's really about making sure that we're creating long-term customer success and value over short-term profit. And Christian Klein has been very intentional about that to the capital markets when we took that really enormous market cap hit a few years ago, right? And so, that kind of dovetails into the people strategy of the house too. We had to change the way people are compensated. We had to change the way that we align in the organization and break down different silos and make sure that every part of the people that are interacting with the customer, right? We're rolling up to the same board area. We have the same objectives. We have different compensation plans that don't just focus on sales. They focus on other KPIs, right? And the investments that we're making in our people strategy and the roles that are engaging with our customer. We are tremendously focused, if you haven't noticed, on those post-sales roles, the people that are going to help the customer, the services that they're going to offer, how we're going to offer those services to make sure that at every point in their journey, SAP is there holding their hand, helping to remove roadblocks, making sure they get what they need, keeping everybody accountable. That's a part of, customer success. So that's really, really major. And we're doing this big reskilling and shifting. And I'm sure everybody's very familiar with all the essential learnings that we have to take to really, in order to help us shift to this mindset of customer lifetime value. So that's an enormous part of the transformation, right? And I think one of the other things is obviously the product side of the house, right? There's a lot that SAP's done over the past few years to shift to the service-based model, right? I think one of the first things that we did is realize that we need to double down on our core competencies, right? We had to get out of the data center business. A lot of us remember, the HANA Enterprise Cloud and the fact that we built this data center business from the ground up. And that was really the intent behind it, was to drive more adoption of our HANA database, which was really expensive to run when it first came out. And again, barrier to entry. So it was created out of a need that existed at the time. But if you look at the market now, there's no way that SAP can compete with the Amazons and the Googles and the Microsofts of the world, right? So we realized we need to take more of a partnership approach with them. So now we're kind of very intentional about getting out of that data center business and really doubling down on making sure we are partnering with our hyperscalers so we can take advantage of all that infrastructure innovation that comes with it and really stay in our lane and focus on the application side of the house, right? I think the other thing that we had to do is really get to a true cloud ERP, right? And that's kind of two facets. You got to make sure that our existing large multinational customers have a path to move to the cloud. And then we have to have a true public cloud, right? That is able to, be built in a way that serves the needs of most of our customers and gives you platforms of innovation like the business technology platform to layer those capabilities on top to make sure that you can differentiate and you have something that makes your company unique from the standard model, but we're not doing it at the code level, right? So that we can keep systems updated and innovative and it's not a 6-month project, right, to get to that next release. So we really had to change the way that we engineered the product. We had to change all of the architecture for that core ERP product, right? And we had to really invest in systems of innovation that offer that modularity that customers are looking for. Instead of, trying to spin up some large, infrastructure and product for a specific capability, let's just subscribe to a service that I can, easily ingest into my application stack and get it when I need, only, what I need, the sliver of functionality at the time, right? And so that's just a much different approach than we've taken in the past. And I think the last key pillar is our ecosystem and our partner network that also had to change, right? We need a way to scale better. And if you notice, we have built out this app center on the business technology platform where we are encouraging our customers to create IP, right? We are encouraging them to create IP to fill the gaps and the things that SAP doesn't focus on and the unique requirements that our industry customers have in the market, right? We also lean on our partner ecosystem to do things like resell SAP, right? And again, in these small to medium-sized markets, that's how we're going to be able to scale. That's how we're going to be able to reach new markets. We also lean on them for delivery of our cloud products, delivery of our ERP, AMS, functional work, right? Ongoing consulting and implementation. And they're also trusted advisors to the customer. So I see the ecosystem role really widening, and we really need to make sure that our partners and SAP are on the same page in terms of how are they going to adapt and change in order to reach that same goal about customer lifetime value. So Maria, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you packed a lot in, and you gave a really good synopsis, Nicole, about really where SAP has been through its journey and really where we are now today. I think one of the key points that you hit on was the need for SAP and for us as partners, like at Innovative Solution Partners, to really be on the same page. The value really comes from us all giving that same message. We've seen the same thing too, right? It's that the barrier to entry. If you bring up the word SAP, traditionally in clients' minds, it's a big effort. It's a lot of money, a lot of time. We don't know if we're going to hit the end point at the same time. And I think this whole new evolution in thinking and change it's only a natural fit. I think from a partner perspective, it's really about looking at that end goal. I mean, it's like when we want to go from point A to point B, we put in our destination to Google Maps. You got 5 different ways you want to get there, whether it's if you've got the time, if you've got the money, if you have enough gas, there's options. And I think the same thing exists when we're looking at how do we provide value to our clients. It's, I share with people that come to us, they think that their problem may be unique. And the reality is, no matter what size business it is or what industry, the problem is kind of the same. It just shifts a little to the left or the right a couple degrees. But the distinction is that your people, process, and operations at each client is what determines how you're going to get from point A to point B. I mean, over the last 20 some years of us being in business, we've created our own methodology. And when I share it to people, it seems really kind of simplistic, but it's amazing the value that it provides. I mean, we call our methodology, it's a focus methodology. Find out requirements, optimize the solution, creatively implement, uniquely align users, successful rollout. But it's probably not surprising and shocking at the same time that the first piece of find out requirements, if you don't have the right people in the room, your requirements, and if you find out the requirements, you're going to miss something. If you speed through that process, you're going to miss something. This idea that the C-suites often have this great vision for their business, right? Okay, we want to achieve this business goal, and I think this solution is going to do it. But when they don't bring in the users that are actually going to work with it on a daily basis as part of their work lives, it's not a big surprise that that becomes one of the biggest hurdles that clients face in terms of having a successful implementation. And the reason why I'm sharing this methodology is because it's a little bit into the psyche of how a business runs and how we look at how we approach that relationship with SAP clients. Because a client to SAP is our client, it's a mutual, beneficial, symbiotic relationship. And so as we look at this evolution within SAP and how that SAP wants to provide value, it's at that every touch point. So when we talk about our focus methodology, it's no different than how SAP is looking at moving quick value. What is it that the customer is going to be tangibly able to see? And this idea that you touched on, Nicole, about modular. If you pick one part of the business, whether it's finance and reporting, which is something, we really understand. A lot of times customers are like, oh, our inventory, we're having inventory issues. Well, let's take a first look at your reporting and do you have accurate data? And then we go on to the next piece. And when they see the value in one area of the business, it becomes a natural conversation to say, how can SAP support you in the next phase, a part of your business that you may want to look at?
Yeah, that's great. It usually fuels the business case, cost savings for that next project, right? No, that's great. And I think, let's talk a little bit maybe now about some best practices, right? A lot of us on the phone, have the opportunity or do have some kind of customer facing role, or work with partners. So let's talk a little bit about how we can create a focus on customer lifetime value, kind of no matter what your role is, right? And so, I'll start with a few of my thoughts and then and turn it over to you. I think for me, one of the first things is if you're having, or if you're in a role that has direct interaction with the customer, or maybe even you don't, just try to think about what is my role and how am I actually connected to the end customer, right? Sometimes that's not easy to understand. So if you don't know, ask somebody, right? But I think prioritizing things that are going to make your customer's life better, solving a problem, learning something new, being a net giver without expecting something in return is one of the principles that I try to live by. And it sounds so simple, but it's really, really easy to get lost in the noise of your day-to-day job, your own KPIs, right? And not necessarily putting yourself in someone else's shoes and having empathy for how they perceive the situation. So that would be, in my opinion, maybe table stakes, but best practice number one, right? And I think from a partner perspective, I would really encourage everyone to have a network of partners and a point of collaboration, right? I think a lot of times when we work with partners, it can be a little bit opportunistic. Maybe it's on a specific customer or a deal we're going after or whatnot. And, I think part of our relationship, Maria, and the value that we have is, we talk on a, ongoing basis just about what's going on in the market. What are you hearing from customers? What am I hearing from customers? What are some things that you can focus on to be a better partner and vice versa? And those actions and exchanges are so critically important. And sometimes we don't do a good enough job of making those a focus and a priority and intentional. So to me, that's just extremely important to do, as a best practice. So what do you think, Maria?
I will say all the above. And I think from us partners' perspective, I will add that, accessibility is extremely important and valuable. I think it could be easy. I mean, I'm looking from a business owner into SAP. SAP is huge, right? And for us to have the ability to have a connection with someone who can help me figure out the next step. It doesn't mean that you've got the answers, but the ability to connect me to somebody who could help me or a resource. Because we all know you go into a portal and it's like you can go down a rabbit hole and still not find what you need.
Us too.
I
We feel the same way, by the
right.
way.
It's easy to get lost. And I would say, don't think that any interaction is too small. And I think a lot of times a client can be defined in multiple different ways. It's not only the people that we're selling to and providing service to, but it is also one another. And I think your idea of the net giver, I mean, Nicole, you and I go way back. We started at like one mutual client.
Yep.
And it's interesting, right? Because when you and I connect, it's so interesting to hear that what you're hearing from your selling side and what we're hearing on the ground with our clients usually is very similar. It's not surprising. You like usually like, oh, this is going on. I'm like, oh my God, I heard, yeah, that's what we're experiencing, and vice versa. And I think it's good to hear, and it's good to then figure out, okay, how can we both move together in our separate roles to go against whatever we're facing.
I love it. I love it. That's exactly right. And I think, we both had very long careers. We've both seen a lot, experienced a lot. And so maybe we can take a couple of minutes now to talk a little bit about, what have we learned over the years? What have we learned that could help someone else maybe on this phone that has a customer facing role, right? And again, I'll start with a super obvious point of customer centricity always wins. I remember one of the first conversations that I had when I joined SAP as a client partner with a woman named Melissa McNally. She was and probably still is the number one client partner in the world, probably. She is amazing at her job. And when I asked her what her key to success was, she said, it's really simple. Always put your customer first, not yourself, not even SAP. Put your customer first and you will be successful. And that's something that just stuck with me throughout this career because, again, it's really easy to get lost in other priorities, right? So take time to build customer intimacy, know who they are, know their business, know what their problems are. If they ask you to do something, act with empathy, act with urgency, right? Don't forget the pageantry of it. Don't take your customers for granted. Oh, they're an SAP customer, so, they're going to, continue to do X, Y, or Z. Don't have that mindset, right? Because it's a cloud world now. And, customers can pivot and change and go a different direction much easier than they could in the past. So I would just really encourage everyone to have that customer centricity mindset. And then, another obvious point, but is easy to forget sometimes, is setting really clear expectations, whether it's with your management, your customers, your team, your consulting partners, right? It's extremely important to lay out a clearly defined goal, roles and responsibilities, program governance, and making sure that you're keeping a cadence so that you're moving the needle and making sure that we are on target. There's been so many customer situations, I can't even tell you, where, after the sale is over, we're checking in 6, 12 months down the road, and there's huge delays that we could have helped the customer to avoid had we had more customer intimacy and better relationship and cadence with our partners. So very important. And the last one that I have is just always go above and beyond, right? Always go, do things that is the next role that you want. Take a step outside of the box. Do something for the greater overall good of your team or your customer or your market unit, right? If you want to stand out, you have to take those opportunities and make sure that your brand and your value proposition is clearly defined and people know if you think about Nicole Smith, what are the one or two things that come to mind? Make sure that you really understand that and double down because, this company has over 100,000 employees, right? And if you really want to make your mark to the customer, to your team, to your partners, it's really important to know what your brand is and take time to define that and hone that skill. It's very important. So what do you think, Maria?
I think there's a couple key points that I will build on that you shared. This idea of build your brand. I will say that as a business owner, typically when I walk into the room, not always a lot of women in that room. So first thing I've learned is set the table. I always tell people that what my role is in my business so that they understand who I am. Otherwise, they're going to make the story up about who I am and what my role is. And that builds up on your brand, right? I think it took me a long time to figure out that staying true to yourself is part of you building who you are in your brand so that people know no matter where they intersect with you in life, whether it's at your role at SAP, it's whether you're volunteering out in the community, whether it's you as a human being, anywhere that they meet you, they know what to expect from you. And that is one of the key factors I feel like in my role as running my business. Our customers come back to us over 20 years. We've survived a recession, we survived the pandemic. It's really because people can trust us. They know that we're honest. They know that we're doing the best for them, which is what Nicole, you said too. It's like, be focused on the customer. Do I always want to make a sale? Of course we want. I mean, that's what's keeping us feeding our families. But the reality is like we're all in for the long game. It's not about that number today. It's not about, oh, I think it sounds good. Have we really done our due diligence about what we are providing? And I think, as from an outside looking in, I will tell you that SAP Connections, whether you are at SAP today or you're at a different role within SAP in such a large organization, the connections that you make matter. Some of we have partner managers who helped us through our career as an SAP partner. There's still people that I can connect with and contact and be like, hey, how you been? What's going on? We're at this place in our journey and can you support us? And I think that is part of how we can all look and develop ourselves, whether it's a career aspect or if it's a personal development aspect. I think there's a lot of takeaways. I think you shared a lot of good points, Nicole. There's so much to this. And I think especially as women in tech, there's a little bit of a different nuance to all of this.
Yes, definitely. I have to share a quick story, okay, on that point. I remember one time going to one of my customers, Goodyear Tire, in Ohio, and it was myself, it was my customer solutions director, and my boss, 3 women. Walked into the room, we were the first ones there, and people started coming in, and the first woman to come in the room started to walk in, and then she stopped and she goes, "Oh, I think I'm in the wrong meeting." And I'm like, "What meeting are you in or trying to be in?" And she was like, "The SAP meeting," right? Because the profile of 3 women walking in there was just not something that you expect, right? And so I totally agree with that. And I think one of my favorite parts about this role is just breaking through that barrier and getting people to quickly realize the value that we bring. And it's usually something that we can get over fairly quickly, but it's always funny to me, kind of those first reactions, right? So I love that. Well, okay, so we're pretty good with the pace here. I think we have a couple more minutes, so we wanted to open it to Q&A. So maybe we can just end with a few final words here. I think what I also wanted to make sure to mention in this session is, especially for those of us at SAP, there's a ton of change going on right now, and it is not easy. It's not easy for any of us, right? But I think it's really important to remember how necessary this change is in order for us to all continue to be successful and for our customers and our partners to be successful. So it definitely means a lot of disruption. It means trying to embrace a new mindset. It means, trying to work with different ways of working, digital groups that you used to be able to talk to a human being. There's all sorts of things going on that kind of are disruptions that are necessary in order for us to reach that end goal. So what I like to try to tell my team, like, I can't change all the things that are happening, but it really helps to understand the why behind it. Then it makes the what and the how at least more tolerable when right? I actually, the earnings announcement that came out, right? We last year, we were not doing great on operating profit, right? And that's part of this transformation too. That's what the capital markets want to see. Top line sales is great, but they also want to see, that operating margin improve, because there's a lot of overhead here. And so when I saw that we were up 12% in that area, it kind of gave me a sense of relief, right? It doesn't mean that the things that I have to go through now are any easier, because they're not, but at least I understand that the little part of the disruption that I'm going through is making a difference, right? And I think that's really important to keep in mind. I think it's really important to give people grace in this process, because we're all dealing with a lot of change. And if you don't understand what your role is and how you're impacting that end customer, go ask somebody and really understand that, and try to bring yourself back to that point when you're having a challenging time. Maria, any last words from you?
I would say it's an exciting time. I mean, I grew when I graduated college, it was like either SAP or PeopleSoft. Okay, those are like the two tracks that people were getting job opportunities in. So for me, I'm looking at this going, this is an exciting time. This is like a classic business case study where a big, large corporation is taking on a huge undertaking. And it's really the success is going to come from all of us doing things maybe a little differently, having communications in a different way. But the bigger piece of this is going to be, how can we all share this same message across,
Yes.
like loud and clear and very true to the point that this is all about customers understanding the value they're going to get from SAP, not just today, but long term. And that we're really being responsive to the market rather than this is how it's always been done and this is how we're going to continue to do it.
No doubt. Let's be more like Nordstrom and less like Sears,
So you and I are based out of the Detroit area. There's this thing.
That's
there's
true.
This,
Ooh, I don't know if I run those.
no, well, this quote of Henry Ford, I don't know if everyone's heard on the call, was like, I'll give you any car as long as it's black, right? And that was what we were always taught in business school. Like, you cannot be like that. I think it's exciting to see this change coming down.
No doubt. No doubt. So Sarah, are you out there? Back over to you. See if we have
Thank you so much. No, thank you to the both of you. That was exactly as you mentioned in your intro. It was easy to understand and digest. And I think it's really interesting, especially for people who are in roles like mine that have nothing to do with customers, to really understand that journey and be able to really, get it step by step, and to hear what you all are doing, especially as well from our partner perspective. So I thank you both so much. That was so interesting and insightful. And I hope everyone from our audience also got some key takeaways, because it's not every day, if you're in a completely different role, like I mentioned, that you really get to sit and listen to how other roles work from beginning to end, what the goals are and what our focuses are at SAP. And it's great to hear we have some people who are being amazing to our customers. So I thank you both and are putting our customers first. So I'll hand over to the chat now. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat, or you can turn on your mic. But as I mentioned, this session is being recorded and will be shared externally. So just keep that in mind if you don't want to be seen on camera. So I'll give it a few minutes to see if we have any questions coming in.
Don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you.
Nicole, maybe I'll ask you a question. What is your favorite part about your job?
Wow. I get the most fulfillment in two ways. The first one is being in front of the customer and seeing something that I've been working on and put so much passion into come to fruition and see customers successful. Like, it sounds very silly, but there are very little things in life that give me more joy than that, because we put so much heart and soul into what we do. And I believe so firmly in the SAP technology that it just really excites me when customers are successful. That's number one. And then number two, just as a people leader, I am most fulfilled when I am helping someone else reach their full potential. So those, probably a combination of those two things.
Oh, I love that. Well, I do see we have a question from another Sarah in the audience.
Yay.
So you raised your hand. Would you like to turn on your mic? Oh, Sarah, are you still with us? Okay, well, we'll give her a second. Maybe she'll come back. Well, I'll take the same question to you as well. What's your favorite part of your job, Maria?
Oh my gosh, Nicole, you're stealing all my good answers. I got into this. I know, that's how we probably get along. Really, it's seeing the customer, like when you provide services to a customer and they use it and they get it and they like it and they tell us that, you know what, we're saving so much time. Our people are so much happier. We're getting the information we really want, the way we want to see it. It's like, woo, it's like the light bulb goes off. And it's super rewarding. I mean, I'm a business person at heart with like tech in my blood. So it's like, it's the convergence of everything.
I love that. That's amazing. I see, Sarah, you did try turn on your camera.
Yes,
There we
that was
go.
the
We
error.
can hear you.
So sorry for that. So now without camera. Thank you for the great presentation. What I wanted to ask you guys is, so when uh, you have customer-facing roles, how do you loop back to engineering? How do you interact with them to get this next tweak of our software wherever you need it?
That's such a great question. And I'm going to give you a really honest answer, right? It's not always easy to do that. And some of the, I would say, challenges that I've come across in my career are product management teams that are still kind of stuck in their product or their silo, and they don't want to kind of embrace some of the best of suite products that we have, right? Whether it's a line of business that has their own analytics tool and doesn't want to embrace SAP Analytics Cloud, which we should only have one BI tool, right? I have challenges there with that. And to my knowledge, there really is no formalized way that sales and engineering and development are having an ongoing dialogue. It seems very sporadic. It seems very opportunistic. And that honestly would be something I would love to figure out how to change. So I don't know if you're in a product development role there, Sarah, but I would love to try to figure out how we can work better together. I don't have a great answer for you, unfortunately.
I am. Feel free to reach out. And
Yay,
thank you for
okay.
sharing that.
Great.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. That's an interesting question because I'm listening in from the partner aspect. One of the pieces that I've learned early on was, don't oversell without bringing in the tech side of the house into the conversation. Because a lot of times, in theory, the request doesn't seem like a heavy ask. But unless you truly understand the systems in the back end and how everything really integrates, it's foolish to speak up before you really got somebody in the room that understands it.
No doubt. Things always seem easy, but sometimes in practice and execution, they are not.
Thank you very much for
Absolutely.
those
Well,
answers.
Thank you for the question.
Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions in the chat. So I will close the session. I want to thank everybody in our audience for joining the session today. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you got to learn something from it. It was a very insightful session. So I have to thank our lovely speakers. This was amazing. You both, just your chemistry as well, being able to just bounce off each other's ideas. I can tell you've been working together for some time, and it's great to see that we have such great relationships between our sales teams at SAP and our partners as well. And it's beautiful to see. So thank you both so much. I hope we can have you sometime soon again, hosting another session for us. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
Let's keep the
thank you
collaboration going, team. Look me up on LinkedIn. I would love to know you and get to know all of you and keep the connection going. So truly, thanks for listening today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same.
and
I'd
we're
love to
getting a lot
connect
of
with you as well. And thanks,
we're
Sarah, for
getting a
being a
lot of thank
dynamic
yous.
dynamic host, Sarah. This is like your
Oh, thank you. Even though I said your name wrong, thank you for saying that. And we're getting a lot of thank yous in the chat as well. So with that being said, then I wish everybody a lovely, lovely rest of the day, depending on where in the world you are. And hopefully we'll see you in the next SAP Women in Tech session. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Have a great day.